You didn't need it anyway, my father said, his voice casual through my phone's speaker, as if he hadn't just admitted to stealing my entire college fund. My father nonchalantly told me, you didn't need it anyway, over the phone, sounding as if it were no big deal, despite having just confessed to taking all of my college savings. Besides, what's done is done. No point getting upset about it now. He added that there was no sense in getting upset over something that had already happened and couldn't be changed. My name is Vanessa, and at 25, I was standing in my tiny apartment in London, listening to my father explain why he drained the account that was supposed to fund my final year of college, the fund I'd built through scholarships, part-time jobs, and careful savings since high school. At 25, I, Vanessa, was in my small London apartment, listening to my father justify emptying the college fund I had spent years carefully building through scholarships and part-time work to pay for my last year of school. How much is left? I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. My hands trembled, but I managed to keep my voice even as I asked, how much money is remaining? Left. None of it's left, honey. I had some debts to clear up, but don't worry. You're smart. You'll figure something out. There's none left, sweetie, he replied, explaining that he used it to pay off his debts, but reassured me that, since I was so smart, I'd find a way to manage. Figure something out, like I had a choice. Like he hadn't just stolen for years of my hard work while I was studying abroad. Unable to stop him because he'd remained a co-signer on the account I'd opened at 17. He said I would figure something out, as if I had any other option, even though he had just stolen 4 years of my hard work from an account he could access because he was still a co-signer from when I opened it as a 17-year-old. I see, I said quietly. Well, good luck with that. Okay, I understand, I responded calmly. I wish you the best of luck. That's my girl, he replied, mistaking my calm for acceptance. Always practical, just like your old dad. Listen, I've got to run. Meeting some friends for drinks. We'll talk soon. He took my composed reaction for agreement and said, that's my girl, always so sensible, just like me. Then he said he had to go, as he was meeting friends for drinks, and promised to talk later. Meeting friends for drinks with my money, my future. He was going out with friends, spending the money that was meant for my future. I sat down at my small desk, overlooking the London street I'd fallen in love with during my semester abroad. 3 months left until I had to return home. 3 months to figure out how to salvage my senior year after my own father had pulled the rug out from under me. I sat at my desk, looking out at the London street I had grown to love while studying abroad. I had 3 months before I had to go back home, and in that time, I needed to find a way to save my final year of college after my own father had sabotaged my plans. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from him. Don't mention this to your mom or grandmother. No need to worry them. My phone vibrated with a new text from him which said, don't tell your mom or grandma about this. No need for them to worry. Of course, he didn't want them to know. Just like he hadn't wanted them to know about his gambling debts, his failed business ventures, his pattern of borrowing money he never repaid. Naturally, he wanted to keep this a secret, just as he had, with his gambling debts, failed businesses, and history of borrowing money he never returned. I opened my laptop and began making a list. First, documentation, bank statements, showing the account's history, proof of my deposits, records of the scholarships I'd earned. Then research, legal resources, financial aid options, potential part-time jobs. I opened my laptop and started a list. First, I needed to gather evidence, bank statements, proof of my deposits, and scholarship records. Next, I'd research legal options, financial aid, and possible part-time jobs. My father had always underestimated me, treated me like his backup plan. Good thing you're pretty, he'd say when I brought home straight A's, as if my academic achievements were somehow less important than my appearance. You can always marry rich if college doesn't work out. He had always undervalued me, seeing me as a last resort. When I got straight A's, he would say, "It's a good thing you're pretty," as if my looks were more important than my intelligence. He would even suggest, "You can always marry a rich guy if college doesn't work out." But I hadn't worked this hard, come this far, to let him derail my future. He thought I was being practical when I calmly accepted his theft. He had no idea that practical was exactly what he should fear. However, I had worked too hard to let him ruin my future. He mistakenly believed my calm reaction meant I was being sensible, but he didn't realize that my practicality was actually a threat to him. Over the next week, I pieced together the extent of his betrayal. The account had held just over $42,000. Money I'd earned through academic scholarships, summer jobs, and careful budgeting. My father had withdrawn it all in a series of transfers over the past month, each one just small enough to avoid raising immediate red flags. For the next week, I worked to understand the full scope of his actions. I discovered he had taken just over $42,000, which I had saved from scholarships and summer jobs through a series of small transfers over the last month to avoid arousing suspicion. My roommate, Emma, found me surrounded by bank statements one evening. "Your father did what?" she exclaimed, reading over my shoulder. "Can't you report him for theft?" One night, my roommate, Emma, saw me surrounded by bank statements. "Your dad did what?" she asked in surprise after reading over my shoulder. "Can't you report him for stealing?" The account still had his name on it, I explained. Legally, he had every right to access it. I just never thought he'd actually do this. I should have known better, should have remembered how he'd borrowed my birthday money throughout my childhood, always promising to pay it back, but never doing so, how he tried to convince me to take out extra student loans in my name, claiming he'd help me repay them. His name was still on the account, I told her, explaining that he had the legal right to access it. I admitted I should have known better, recalling how he'd always borrowed my birthday money and never repaid it, and how he had tried to convince me to take out student loans in my name, promising to help me pay them off. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him. "Don't stress about the money. You worry too much? Maybe this is a sign you should take a break from school. I know some guys who could get you a modeling job, better money than that degree." He kept texting me, saying things like, "Don't worry about the money. You're too stressed. Maybe you should take a break from school. And I know people who could get you a modeling job, which pays more than a degree." Each message revealed more about how little he valued my education, my independence, my future. To him, I was just another resource to exploit, another safety net for his poor choices. Every text showed how little he cared about my education, my independence, and my future. To him, I was just something he could use to get out of trouble. I started making calls to my university's financial aid office, to legal aid services, to my grandmother, who'd always supported my academic dreams. I didn't tell them everything yet, just gathered information and assessed my options. I began making calls to my university's financial aid office, legal aid services, and my grandmother, a longtime supporter of my academic goals. I didn't share the full story yet, choosing instead to gather information and weigh my options. My father's next call came while I was in class. Hey, princess, quick question. You wouldn't happen to have any other savings accounts, would you? Just wondering, since you're always so good with money. My father called while I was in class and casually asked, Hey, princess, you're so good with money. Do you happen to have any other savings accounts? The casual entitlement in his voice made my blood boil, but I kept my tone light. Why do you ask? His sense of entitlement infuriated me, but I kept my voice light and asked, Why do you want to know? Oh, no reason. Just thinking about your future. You know how dads are. Thinking about my future like he had when he drained my college fund, like he had when he tried to discourage me from studying abroad, claiming I was running away from family obligations. Oh, no reason. Just thinking about your future. You know how us dads are. He said he was thinking about my future. Just like when he had emptied my college fund and tried to talk me out of studying abroad, claiming I was abandoning my family. Sorry. Dad in class. Now, talk later. I hung up and opened my laptop, adding another item to my growing list. Close any remaining accounts he might know about. Transfer everything to new accounts at a different bank. Sorry, Dad, I'm in class. I'll talk to you later, I said before hanging up. I opened my laptop and added another item to my list. Close any remaining accounts he knew about and move my money to a new bank. That evening, I received an email from my grandmother. Called your father today. He seemed nervous when I asked, About your college fund? Is everything okay? I smiled. Imagining his discomfort, he'd always been afraid of my grandmother, the only person who'd ever successfully held him accountable. Can we talk? I wrote back. There's something you should know. Later that evening, my grandmother emailed me. I called your dad today and asked about your college fund. He sounded nervous. Is everything okay? I couldn't help but smile. Knowing my grandmother, the only one who had ever held him responsible, had made him uncomfortable. Can we talk? I replied. I need to tell you something. My grandmother's response was immediate and fierce. After hearing the full story, she called an emergency family meeting without my father present. My grandmother's reaction was swift and furious. After I told her what happened, she called a last-minute family meeting without my father. That man! She fumed over our video call. My mother and aunt sitting beside her has gone too far this time, stealing from his own daughter. During the video call, she sat with my mother and aunt and raged, That man has crossed a line, this time, stealing from his own child. I watched their faces as I shared the bank statements, the text messages, the casual way he'd dismissed my future. My mother's hands trembled as she read his messages. I had no idea, she whispered. He told me you decided to take a break from school, that you were thinking about moving back home. As I showed them the bank statements, text messages, and his dismissive attitude toward my future. My mother's hands shook. I had no idea, she said in a quiet voice. He told me you had decided to take time off from school and were thinking about moving back home. Of course he had. My father had always been skilled at spinning narratives that suited his needs. How many times had he reinterpreted my achievements to make them about him? How often had he taken credit for my success while secretly undermining it? Of course, he had. My father was an expert at creating stories that benefited him. He always took credit for my successes while secretly undermining me. I've been documenting everything, I told them. Every withdrawal, every message, every call. I'm not letting him get away with this. I've saved everything. I said, every withdrawal, every message, every call. He's not going to get away with this. My aunt, a lawyer, leaned forward. The account issue is tricky since he was a cosigner, but there might be other angles we can pursue. Has he made any promises in writing about repaying the money? My aunt, who is a lawyer, leaned in and said, since he was a cosigner on the account. That part is complicated, but there might be other legal avenues. Did he ever promise in writing that he would repay the money? I pulled up more screenshots, emails where he'd acknowledged the money was for my education, texts where he'd casually mentioned paying me back someday. I showed them more screenshots, including emails in which he admitted the money was for my education and texts where he casually mentioned he would pay me back someday. Perfect, my aunt said. Not legally binding, but excellent leverage for what comes next. That's perfect, my aunt said. It's not legally enforceable, but it will be a huge advantage for our next steps. What comes next? My mother asked. My mother asked, what happens now? Next, my grandmother declared, we make Gregory realize exactly what he's done and whom he's done it to. My grandmother announced, next, we will make Gregory see exactly what he's done and to whom he's done it. The plan came together quickly. My grandmother would confront him first, letting him know the family was aware of his actions. My aunt would draft a formal demand letter, laying out his options for making restitution, and my mother would finally file for the divorce she'd been hesitating over 4 years. The plan was formed quickly. My grandmother would be the first to confront him and let him know the family was aware of his actions. My aunt would write a formal letter demanding payment and outlining his options. Finally, my mother would go through with the divorce she had been considering for years. He's always underestimated you, my grandmother said. Treated you like an extension of himself instead of your own person. Time to show him who you really are. He has always underestimated you, my grandmother said. He has always treated you like a part of himself instead of an individual. Now is the time to show him who you truly are. That night, my father called again. Your grandmother seemed upset today, he said carefully. You didn't tell her anything, did you? My father called me again that night and said cautiously, your grandmother seemed angry today. You didn't tell her anything, did you? About what, Dad? The college fund you stole, the future you tried to derail, or just your general belief that your daughter's education means nothing compared to your bar tab? About what, Dad? I asked. The college fund you stole, the future you tried to ruin, or the fact that you think my education is less important than your bar bill? Silence on his end. Then, now, princess, ... Dot. There was silence on his end before he said, "Now, princess? Don't call me princess. Don't call me at all. Everything goes through Aunt Sarah from now on." "Don't call me that," I replied. "Don't call me at all. From now on, you'll communicate with Aunt Sarah." "Why would your aunt need to be involved?" "Sarah, why would she need to be involved?" he asked. "Because she's a lawyer, Dad, and you're about the knee one to—" "Because she's a lawyer, Dad, and you're going to need one yourself?" My father's reaction was predictable. First denial, then anger. Finally, desperate attempts at manipulation. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he texted. "It was just money. Family is more important than money." He reacted predictably first. He denied it, then he got angry, and then he tried to manipulate me. He texted, "You're making too big of a deal out of this. It was just money. Family is more important." I forwarded each message to my aunt without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Without a word, I forwarded every message to my aunt, letting him continue to incriminate himself. His next move was to show up at my grandmother's house, where I was staying until my return flight to London. She didn't let him pass the front porch. That the next thing he did was to show up at my grandmother's house, where I was staying before my flight back to London. She refused to let him come inside. "How dare you?" she demanded, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Stealing your daughter's college fund. Have you no shame? How could you do that?" She yelled loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Stealing your daughter's college fund. Do you have no shame? Mother, please." He tried to lower his voice. "This is a family matter. Mother, please," he said, trying to quiet her. "This is a private family matter." "Exactly," she replied. "And you've betrayed your family. Now leave before I call the police." "Exactly," she replied. "And you have betrayed your family. Get out before I call the police." He left, but the texts continued. "Your grandmother's turned you against me. I'm your father. You owe me respect after everything I've done for you." He left, but the texts didn't stop. "Your grandmother has turned you against me," he wrote. "I'm your father. You owe me respect for everything I've done for you." I thought about everything he'd actually done for me. How he'd tried to discourage my academic achievements, how he'd borrowed my childhood savings, how he'd treated my success as something he could cash in on whenever he needed. I considered everything he had actually done for me. How he had tried to discourage my academic success. How he had taken my childhood savings. And how he had treated my achievements as his personal piggy bank. My aunt's demand letter arrived at his house via certified mail. Inside was a detailed accounting of every penny he'd taken, along with options for repayment. A certified letter from my aunt arrived at his house, containing a detailed list of every penny he had stolen and his options for paying it back. "You can't sue your own father," he called, outraged. "You can't take your own father to court." He yelled over the phone. "Watch me," I replied, then hung up. "Watch me," I responded, and then I hung up. The family fallout was spectacular. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years called to express their disgust. His sister, my Aunt Patricia, shared stories of how he'd borrowed money from her children's birthday cards. The family's reaction was huge. Relatives I hadn't talked to in years called to express their outrage. His sister, my Aunt Patricia, told me he had also taken money from her children's birthday cards. "He's always been like this," she said, "taking what isn't his, expecting everyone to forgive him because he's family." She said, "He's always been like this, taking things that don't belong to him and expecting everyone to forgive him because he's family." My mother finally filed for divorce, citing financial infidelity, among other reasons. During their first hearing, his pattern of stealing from me came to light. My mother officially filed for divorce, citing his financial infidelity and other reasons. His habit of stealing from me was revealed at their first hearing. "You emptied your daughter's college fund to pay gambling debts," the judge asked incredulously. The judge asked in disbelief. "You took all the money from your daughter's college fund to pay off your gambling debt." "I was going to pay it back," he protested weakly. "I was going to pay it back," he said in a weak voice. "With what money?" The judge replied, "According to these statements, you haven't held a steady job in 3 years." "With what money?" The judge shot back. "Your bank statements show you haven't had a steady job in 3 years." His carefully constructed image of the fun-loving, generous father was crumbling. Every attempt to defend himself just revealed more of his true nature. His image as a carefree and generous father was falling apart. Every time he tried to defend himself, his true character was exposed. The university's financial aid office proved surprisingly helpful once they understood the situation. They helped me secure emergency funding and worked out a payment plan for my final year. My grandmother insisted on covering what she could, though I was hesitant to accept. The university's financial aid office was surprisingly helpful after I explained what had happened. They helped me get emergency funding and arranged a payment plan for my last year. My grandmother, despite my hesitation, insisted on helping me cover some of the cost. "Unlike your father," she said firmly, "I understand the value of education and of keeping promises." "I am not like your father," she said assertively. "I understand the importance of an education and of keeping your word." My father's response to the demand letter was to claim poverty, insisting he had no way to repay what he'd stolen. Then my aunt discovered his new car purchase, the vacation photos he'd posted on social media, the country club membership he somehow still maintained. My father responded to the letter by claiming he was broke and couldn't pay me back. But then my aunt found out he had bought a new car, posted vacation photos on social media, and still had a country club membership. "He's not broke," she explained. "He's just good at hiding assets, but not good enough." "He's not broke," she said. "He's just good at hiding his money, but not good enough to get away with it." His text messages grew increasingly desperate. "You're ruining my life. My own daughter turning against me like this. I raised you better than this." His texts became more and more desperate, saying things like, "You're ruining my life. My own daughter is turning on me, and I raised you better than this." Each message showed more of his true colors. The loving father act dropped away, revealing the manipulator beneath. Every text showed his true self, with the loving father act disappearing to reveal the manipulator underneath. The final straw came when he tried to turn my younger cousins against me. telling them I was trying to bankrupt him out of spite. Instead, they shared screenshots of his messages, adding to my growing file of evidence. The last straw was when he tried to turn my younger cousins against me, saying I was trying to bankrupt him out of spite. Instead, they sent me screenshots of his messages, which I added to my growing file of evidence. Remember when Uncle Greg told us our college funds were safe with him? My cousin Jake wrote, "Guess we know what that meant." My cousin Jake texted, "Remember when Uncle Greg told us he would protect our college funds? I guess we know what that meant now." My aunt helped them secure their own accounts before he could strike again. His pattern of financial abuse was finally being exposed. One family member at a time. My aunt helped them secure their own accounts before he could steal their money. His history of financial manipulation was finally being exposed to the family, one person at a time. During my mother's divorce proceedings, more revelations surfaced. He'd been hiding money for years, taking out loans in her name, even trying to remortgage their house without her knowledge. He's been treating the whole family like his personal ATM, my mother realized, and we all just kept making excuses. For him, as the divorce proceeded, more information came to light. He had been hiding money, taking out loans in my mother's name, and even trying to remortgage their house without her knowing. My mother said he has been using the whole family as his personal ATM, and we have all been making excuses for him. My grandmother arranged a family meeting again, without him present. Relatives shared stories of loans never repaid, promises broken, trust betrayed. Each story strengthened our resolve to hold him accountable. My grandmother held another family meeting, and again, my father was not there. Relatives shared stories of unpaid loans, broken promises, and betrayed trust. Every story made us more determined to hold him responsible. He's always counted on family loyalty to shield him from consequences, my aunt observed. Time to show him that loyalty goes both ways. My aunt noted he has always used family loyalty to protect himself from the consequences of his actions. It is time to show him that loyalty is a two-way street. The consequences hit my father like dominoes falling. First, my mother's divorce. Attorney uncovered his hidden accounts, leading to a much larger settlement than he'd anticipated. Then my aunt's legal pressure forced him to agree to a repayment plan for my stolen funds with interest. His careful facade of the generous, fun-loving dad crumbled completely when the family learned he'd been borrowing money from elderly relatives, promising returns on investments that never materialized. My father faced a series of consequences. My mother's lawyer found his hidden accounts, resulting in a larger settlement than he had expected. Then, my aunt's legal action forced him to agree to a repayment plan with interest for the money he stole from me. His image as a fun and generous father was completely destroyed when the family found out he had also been borrowing money from older relatives, promising returns on fake investments. A regular Ponzi scheme, my aunt muttered, adding these discoveries to her growing file. It's just a Ponzi scheme, my aunt said quietly, adding these new findings to her growing file. His text messages shifted from angry to pleading. I'm still your father. We can work this out. Everyone makes mistakes. Why can't you forgive me? What will people think of you treating your dad this way? His texts went from angry to begging. He wrote, I'm still your dad. We can fix this. Everyone makes mistakes. Why won't you forgive me? And what will people think of you for treating your dad like this? I thought about all the times he'd use guilt to control me, how he twisted every situation to make himself the victim. Not anymore. I thought about how he had always used guilt to control me and how he had always played the victim. I knew I couldn't let him do it anymore. Through my grandmother's connections, I secured a part-time job that allowed me to complete my degree while working. My professors, understanding my situation, helped me arrange a flexible schedule. My grandmother's contacts helped me get a part-time job so I could work and finish my degree. My professors, who understood my situation, also helped me create a flexible schedule. Every small victory felt like a step further from his influence. Each small victory felt like a step away from his control. The family's support surprised me. Cousins shared their own stories of his financial manipulation. Aunts and uncles who'd once enabled his behavior now stood firmly against him. Even distant relatives reached out to offer encouragement. I was surprised by the support from my family. My cousins told me their own stories of his financial manipulation. Aunts and uncles who had once enabled him now stood against him. Even distant relatives reached out to offer their support. Your father called, my grandmother told me one evening, trying to convince me to talk you out of the repayment plan, said it was destroying the family. My grandmother told me one evening, your father called and tried to get me to convince you to drop the repayment plan. He said it was destroying the family. What did you tell him? I asked. What did you say to him? That he destroyed it himself when he stole from his own daughter. She replied, I told him that he was the one who destroyed the family when he stole from his own daughter. His last attempt at manipulation was to show up at my graduation, uninvited, unwelcome, but determined to play the role of proud father. That's my girl, he announced loudly to anyone who would listen. Gets her business sense from me. He made one last attempt to manipulate me by showing up at my graduation without an invitation, determined to act like a proud father. That's my girl. He yelled to everyone around him. She gets her business sense from me. My Aunt Sarah had him escorted out before the ceremony began. Your success belongs to you, she told me afterward. He doesn't get to claim credit for what he tried to prevent. My Aunt Sarah had him removed before the ceremony began. Afterward, she told me, your success is yours alone. He doesn't get to take credit for what he tried to stop. A year after the confrontation over my stolen college fund, my father's carefully constructed world had completely unraveled. The divorce had exposed his financial schemes to everyone. Former friends who'd invested in his business ventures were demanding answers. Relatives he'd borrowed from were taking legal action. A year after I confronted him about my stolen college fund, my father's life had fallen apart. The divorce revealed his financial schemes, and now former friends who had invested in his businesses were demanding answers. Relatives he had borrowed money from were also taking legal action against him. My graduation party, hosted by my grandmother, became a celebration not just of my academic achievement, but of my independence. Friends and family gathered to support me, many of them sharing their own stories of standing up to manipulative parents. My grandmother threw me a graduation party that celebrated not just my academic success, but my new independence. Friends and family came to support me, and many of them shared their own stories of standing up to manipulative parents. Your father called me yesterday, my mother said during the party. wanted to know if I'd talk to you about dropping the repayment plan. Said he's learned his lesson. At the party, my mother told me, your father called me yesterday. He asked me to talk to you about ending the repayment plan. He said he has learned his lesson. Has he? I asked, thinking of his latest social media posts, still showing him living beyond his means, still pretending everything was fine. Has he, I asked, thinking about his recent social media posts that showed him still spending beyond his means and pretending everything was okay. No, she sighed. He's learned he can't manipulate you anymore. That's not the same thing. No, she sighed. He's just learned that he can't manipulate you anymore. That's not the same thing. The repayment plan my aunt had arranged was strict, monthly payments directly from his paycheck, no excuses accepted. He'd finally had to get a real job when his schemes dried up, his previous lifestyle impossible to maintain. Now that no one would lend him money, the repayment plan my aunt set up was strict. He had to make monthly payments directly from his paycheck without any excuses. He had finally been forced to get a real job because his schemes had run out and no one would lend him money anymore, making his old lifestyle impossible to maintain. It's not fair, he'd complained in his last email. I'm your father. You're supposed to love me unconditionally. In his last email, he complained, it's not fair. I'm your father. You're supposed to love me no matter what. Love isn't a blank check, I replied, my last direct communication with him. And conditions are what happen when you break trust. In my last message to him, I wrote, love is not a blank check. And when you break trust, conditions are what you get. My career was taking off. I'd secured a position with a top firm in London, my degree and determination opening doors I'd once thought closed. Each success felt sweeter for having been earned entirely on my own terms. My grandmother had become my strongest ally, her fierce protection a stark contrast to my father's self-serving love. My career was starting to flourish. My determination and degree had helped me get a job with a top firm in London, which opened up opportunities I had thought were closed to me. Every achievement felt better because I had earned it myself. My grandmother became my strongest supporter, and her fierce protection was a complete opposite of my father's selfish love. He called again. She told me over Sunday dinner, wanted to know if you'd gotten that job in London. Said he'd love to visit once you're settled. Over Sunday dinner, she told me, he called again. He wanted to know if you got the job in London and said he would love to visit you once you're settled. To visit or to ask for money, I asked, already knowing the answer. Was he calling to visit or to ask for money? I asked, already knowing what the answer would be. Both, probably. I told him, you're done funding his lifestyle. Probably both, she said. I told him you are no longer going to pay for his lifestyle. The family dynamics had shifted permanently. Relatives who'd once enabled his behavior now shared warnings about his latest schemes. His sister, my Aunt Patricia, had started a family group chat specifically to track his attempts at manipulation. Family dynamics had changed forever. Relatives who used to enable his behavior now shared warnings about his newest schemes. His sister, my Aunt Patricia, had even started a family group chat to keep track of his manipulative attempts. He tried to convince my son to co-sign a car loan. She reported one day, told him it would help build his credit. Sound familiar? He tried to get my son to co-sign a car loan. She wrote one day he told him it would help his credit. Does that sound familiar? It did. He tried the same tactic with me at 18, attempting to saddle me with debt before I'd even started college. Back then, my grandmother had intercepted the paperwork and warned me about predatory practices, including those from family members. Yes, it did. He had tried to do the same thing to me when I was 18, trying to get me to take on debt before I even started college. My grandmother had stopped him and warned me about bad financial practices, even from family members. Now, watching his world shrink as mine expanded, I felt not victory but validation. Every payment he made, forced by legal pressure rather than paternal responsibility, proved what I'd always known. He was capable of doing the right thing. He just never thought he had to. As I watched my life get bigger and his get smaller, I didn't feel a sense of victory, but validation. Each payment he made, which was forced by legal pressure and not because of his responsibility as a father, proved what I had always known. He was capable of doing the right thing. He just never thought he needed to. My success had become a form of protection. The more I achieved, the less power he had to affect my future. The degree he tried to derail now hung on my wall, each accomplishment a reminder that his greatest mistake wasn't stealing my money. It was underestimating my resolve. My success was now my protection. The more I accomplish, the less control he had over my future. My degree, which he had tried to stop me from getting, was now hanging on my wall. Every accomplishment was a reminder that his biggest mistake was not stealing my money, but underestimating my determination. My return to London marked a new chapter. The firm had offered me not just a job, but a future I'd built despite my father's attempts to derail it. My small flat in the city became a symbol of independence, paid for with my own money, decorated with my own taste, free from any influence he might try to claim. My return to London was the start of a new chapter. The firm had given me not just a job, but a future that I had created despite my father's efforts to ruin it. My small apartment in the city became a symbol of my independence, paid for with my own money and decorated to my own taste. Completely free of his influence, his attempts to maintain contact became increasingly transparent. First came the birthday card, the first he'd sent in years, with a carefully crafted message about how proud he was of my achievements. "Did you see how he signed it?" my mother asked over the phone. "Love, Dad, your biggest supporter." The audacity of that man, his attempts to stay in touch with me became more obvious. First, he sent me a birthday card, the first in years, with a carefully written message about how proud he was of my achievements. "Did you see how he signed it?" my mother asked over the phone. "Love, Dad, your biggest supporter." The nerve of that man. Then came the social media posts, tagging me in old family photos with captions about how he'd always encouraged my dreams. Each post carefully curated to paint himself as the devoted father who'd sacrificed everything for his daughter's success. My Aunt Sarah helped me draft a cease and desist letter when the posts escalated to claims about his investment in my education. Then he started tagging me in old family photos on social media with captions saying he had always encouraged my dreams. Each post was carefully made to make him look like a devoted father who had given up everything for his daughter's success. When his posts became claims about his investment in my education, my Aunt Sarah helped me write a cease and desist letter. He's trying to rewrite history, she explained. Make sure there's a paper trail proving otherwise. She explained, he's trying to change the past. Make sure you have a paper trail that proves otherwise. His response was predictable. More attempts at manipulation, more claims of family loyalty, more hints about his financial struggles, but his words had lost their power to hurt me. Through family gossip, I heard about his latest schemes. He'd started telling people he had connections in London, suggesting he could help their children find opportunities abroad. His response was predictable. He tried to manipulate me again, talking about family loyalty and hinting at his financial problems. But his words no longer had the power to hurt me. I heard through family gossip about his latest schemes. He had started telling people he had connections in London and could help their children find opportunities abroad. Your father says you're hiring at your firm. One family friend wrote, he offered to put in a good word for my daughter for a small consulting fee, of course. A family friend wrote to me, your father says your firm is hiring. He offered to put in a good word for my daughter for a small consulting fee. I wrote back, explaining that my father had no connection to my firm, no influence over hiring, and no right to charge fees for false promises. Each response felt like another brick in the wall between his lies and my truth. I wrote back, explaining that my father had no connection to my firm, no power over who gets hired, and no right to charge people for false promises. Every time I responded, it felt like I was adding another brick to the wall between his lies and my reality. My grandmother visited me in London, her first trip abroad at 70. Seeing my life through her eyes, the career I'd built, the home I'd made, the future I'd secured brought everything full circle. You know what makes me, she said over dinner at my favorite local pub, not just what you've achieved, but how you achieved it. You didn't let him turn you bitter. You just got stronger. My grandmother, at 70, came to visit me in London, her first time abroad. As she saw my life, the career I had built, the home I had created, the future I had secured, everything came full circle. You know what I'm most proud of? She said, as we ate dinner at my favorite pub, it's not just what you've achieved, but how you did it. You didn't let him make you bitter. You just became stronger. That evening, I received another text from him. Heard mom's visiting the flat. Must be cramped. I know some great hotels if you need help with the expense. I showed my grandmother the message, and we both laughed. The same old tactics, transparent as glass, now that I saw them clearly. That night, he texted me again. I heard your mother is visiting. Your apartment must be small. I know some great hotels if you need help paying for them. I showed the text to my grandmother, and we both laughed. His old tricks were completely obvious to me now. Should I respond? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Should I reply to him? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Darling, she said, raising her glass, your success is all the response he needs. Sweetheart, she said, raising her glass, your success is the only answer he needs. 2 years after the confrontation over my stolen college fund, my father's repayment plan was still in force, each monthly payment a reminder of his accountability. He'd tried various schemes to reduce or delay the payments, but my aunt's legal oversight remained firm. 2 years later, my father was still making monthly payments on the repayment plan for the money he stole, which served as a reminder that he was being held accountable. He had tried to find ways to reduce or delay the payments, but my aunt's legal oversight was strict. During a family gathering back home, my cousin Jake shared his own victory. He'd graduated debt-free, his college funds secured in an account my father couldn't access. At a family gathering, my cousin Jake told us about his own success. He had graduated without any debt because his college fund was in an account my father couldn't access. You know what Uncle Greg said when I told him. Jake laughed that I should thank you for overreacting about your fund. Said your dramatic response helped him learn an important lesson. You know what Uncle Greg said when I told him? Jake laughed. He said I should thank you for overreacting about your fund, saying your dramatic response helped him learn an important lesson. Did he learn, though? I asked, thinking of his latest attempts to convince relatives to invest in his new business venture. But did he actually learn? I asked, thinking about his recent attempts to get relatives to invest in his new business. He learned not to target family members who have good lawyers. My aunt, Sarah, interjected. That's about it. He learned not to mess with family members who have good lawyers. My Aunt Sarah interrupted. That's about all he learned. My career continued to flourish. The firm had promoted me to a senior position. My reputation built on the same attention to detail and determination that had helped me overcome my father's betrayal. My career continued to thrive. The firm promoted me to a senior position, and my reputation was built on the same determination and attention to detail that helped me get past my father's betrayal. His Christmas card arrived at my London flat, thick with forced cheerfulness and hints about his financial struggles. Inside, he'd written, "Still paying for one mistake. When will you let it go?" I pinned it to my bulletin board next to my degree and latest promotion letter reminders that his one mistake had failed to define my future. I received a Christmas card from him at my London apartment that was full of forced cheerfulness and hints about his money problems. Inside, he had written, "I'm still paying for one mistake. When will you let it go?" I pinned it to my bulletin board next to my degree and my latest promotion letter to remind myself that his one mistake had not defined my future. His signature at the bottom, once a symbol of paternal authority, now looked exactly like what it was. The mark of a man who'd bet against his daughter's strength and lost. His signature at the bottom, which used to be a symbol of his authority as my father, now looked like what it truly was, the mark of a man who had gambled against his daughter's strength and lost. At my firm's annual charity gala, I was asked to speak about persistence and overcoming obstacles. I didn't mention my father directly, but I talked about the moment I'd learned my college fund was gone, not as a story of betrayal, but as a lesson in self-reliance. I was asked to speak about persistence and overcoming challenges at my firm's annual charity gala. I didn't mention my father by name, but I talked about the moment I found out my college fund was gone as a story of betrayal, but as a lesson in relying on myself. Sometimes I told the audience, the people who should support you the most become the obstacles you need to overcome. Their underestimation becomes your motivation. I told the audience, sometimes the people who are supposed to support you the most become the challenges you have to overcome. Their underestimation of you can become your motivation. My father saw the speech online. Someone had shared it in the family group chat he'd been excluded from. His response came through my grandmother. She's still angry, using my mistake to get attention. My father saw my speech online because someone had shared it in the family group chat from which he had been excluded. He responded through my grandmother, saying, she is still angry and using my mistake to get attention. No, my grandmother had replied. She's successful, using her strength to help